Hi, it's David here. I hope you're well. I'm having a lot of problems with my voice today, so I don't know how this is gonna go. I feel a bit hoarse, a bit husky. So, but welcome to another edition of People in Politics. If you've not done so, please subscribe to the show. I'd be very grateful. Joining me in today's show is Brian Leishman MP. I'm really looking forward to talking to Brian after he was elected when Keir Starmer won the landslide election last year. But Brian's been sitting as an independent MP after having the whip withdrawn in July of this year. And Brian's been really outspoken about some of the policy of the government, the cuts to winter fuel payments, and the proposed cuts to welfare benefits. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, welcome to People in Politics. Brian, thank you very much for your time. It was really nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks very much for having me on. It's great to get the invite. Thank you.
No, not at all. And as I mentioned a minute ago, I was looking back and I noticed that you were a registered PGA, and I was just thinking that was pretty interesting, trying to from professional golfer to to politician. Yeah. How did that come about?
Well, it's certainly not the conventional way I ended up being a member of Parliament, but no, once I left school, I went to Stirling University, but I only lasted 6 weeks. I was studying history and politics, but I realised that it just wasn't for me. So I packed it in on the Friday, and then I became a golf professional on the Monday, and it was 3 years training, and I ended up being a golf professional for nearly 24 years. Um,
Mm.
and for the last couple of years that I was a golf pro, I fancied running for local council, and I got elected as a councillor. And I absolutely loved it. So I did that for 2 years, and then the opportunity came to apply for the candidate position with the Labour Party for the new constituency in Alloway and Grangemouth, and had worked in Clackmannanshire for
Right.
13 and a half years as a golf pro. So I knew an awful lot of people in the area. The area has been very, very good to me. I applied, won the nomination, and ended up benefiting out of the swing towards Labour last year. And here I am, ended up as an MP.
That's a good story, and yeah, why not? And when I was looking over when I was looking over your past, I thought we've got something in common. We're both graduates of Abertay.
My my
Yeah.
my son's at Abertay just now as well. He's just finished his second year. Well, he's actually just started his third year. So he's through in Dundee just now, and he is loving the student lifestyle. And yeah, he's having an absolutely brilliant experience at Abertay.
That's what I intended. But just to show that my age, when I started at Abertay, it was still Dundee Tech. It was DIT for the first 2 years of my degree, and then I think I came back to start third year. It was always like the doors had just swung wide open, and they had taken in so many students because they had to get numbers up to to get university status. So 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 it's just like they recruited everybody and their dog to come and study at Aberdeen. So, but
So I think
that makes
I
that
think
makes it feel like, oh, that was a long time ago.
yeah, well. It's been a university now for quite a while, but I think it's world renowned certainly in regard, I think, of IT and kind of computer gaming and so on. Yeah.
Good, good. Oh well, we got that in common. So, when you were elected MP last year, or just over a year ago, did you ever think that you'd be asked to vote for cuts to winter fuel allowance, a freezing pit for welfare, and did you think that would happen?
Oh, absolutely not. I think some of the policy decisions that the government have taken in our first year in government, or just over a year in government, have been very surprising. And I would say as well, I've said in media appearances, I would say that they've been fundamentally against what I would describe as Labour Party core values, especially the welfare cuts. As I was very outspoken pretty much since they were announced. What we've seen over 14 years of austerity has been really people getting worse, and some of the most disadvantaged and vulnerable people have seen their life conditions deteriorate. What we've got to do as a Labour government now that we're in power is that we've got to try and build a caring and compassionate society that actually looks after people and doesn't punish them. So yeah, for me, the welfare bill was massively important as it was against core Labour Party values and principles that I hold dear.
I can't remember how many of you and your colleagues lost a whip over that. I'm sure I'm sure that 8 or 10 or whatever.
There's four of us. There's myself, Rachel Maskell, Chris Hinchliffe, and Neil Duncan Jordan. Myself, Chris, and Neil are new intake, 2024 intake MPs, and
So
Rachel's been an MP for I think York Central for a decade. So yeah, a bit of a mixture. The four of us it was right after, pretty much right after the welfare vote.
and yeah, I was aware of Rachel McCaskill. I remember saying, or I'm sorry, Maskell, but I can't remember the other. But I was wondering what you said, what you thought that said about the other, how 300 odd, Labour MPs who are happy to go along with it and voting for these kind of changes and
There
cuts to one
was
welfare.
there,
What do
there
you say
was
about them?
when we look at the welfare cuts, the welfare bill, there was over 100 Labour MPs that signed the reasoned amendment or the wrecking amendment that were protesting against it at the second reading. And then in the third reading, there were 49 Labour MPs that basically voted against it, plus some independent MPs that are Labour Party members, such as John McDonnell and Afsana Begum. So what I would say as well is it shows that there is still enough Labour MPs within the Parliamentary Labour Party that do hold the founding principles of our party of try to build that caring and compassionate society that they really do want to uphold and govern by proper, real Labour Party values. And it got the welfare cuts reduced from 7 billion down to 2 billion. Now, that's still £2 billion too many. That's why myself and 50 others voted against it. But it showed that there is a strong feeling within the Parliamentary Labour Party that they can move government position and try and get the government into the right position or closer to that anyway. So it goes to show that it's still democracy is still functioning. And it shows that we're still going to continue the fight against this because when I go back down to Parliament, we're on conference recess now. I've organised
Yeah.
meetings with disability charities and organisations to see exactly how I can further represent them in my time as a member of Parliament.
Yeah, of course, yeah, sounds good. But I think you said there's 49 of you voted against the motion, but so so why have only four of you lost a whip?
Well, I would say that what's got to happen is I think that the government have got to try and make sure that they've still got that working majority, and I think
Yeah.
that four of us got suspended, and it hasn't been confirmed to me, but three of us, as I said there, David, were new intake. That perhaps is to try and show a message to the new intake of MPs from 2024 that dissent won't be tolerated. But I
That
think
do as you're told.
but what I will say is, as well, is I think we've got to, it strikes to the heart of a really big issue that the Labour Party have got to try and deal with, and that is that you've got to have robust internal debate because you can't effectively govern a country or come up with policies that will change society if you're not willing to try and win the internal argument. So I think that it's important that backbench MPs like myself, our opinions are encouraged, are tolerated, and listened to, and that's how I would say that every political party should have, and that is healthy internal democracy.
Yeah, and it's good to have opposition, good to have these strong, robust debates. But I think there's a number of occasions, not just on welfare, but there's arguments to say that Keir Starmer is almost it's always a closed down debate, and particularly I'm thinking particularly about Palestine, Gaza. I think he's trying to close down debate on that. He's trying to silence um, the critics or the protesters. And I just feel that, democracy, we have to be careful or it'll go back the way. Would you agree on that?
Well, what I would say is, as well, as I disagree completely with 30 motions being withdrawn or not allowed to be heard at Labour Party conference in regard to Palestine and Gaza. I think that that's the wrong call. I think that, again, I'm a Labour Party member. People join a political party because they want to have political debate, not just with opposition parties, but also internally as well to try and shape policy from within. And I don't think that anything should be taken off the table in regard of discussion and debate, especially internally. So I've certainly Palestine. What's happening in Palestine means an awful lot to me. I've been a vocal critic of the government's foreign policy in regard of Gaza. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that what's happening there is a genocide. We've seen a murderous apartheid regime trying to exterminate and eliminate Palestinian people and seize the land. And that is got to be called out, not just by the UK, but the wider international community. And I think that yesterday's announcement about the recognition of the state of Palestine is a step in the right direction. But also, what the UK government have got to do and the wider international community, we've got to recognise that what's happening right now is actually a genocide. Now, I'm planning on trying to go over to the West Bank in a couple of months.
Wow.
Because as I say, it's an international issue that means an awful lot to me, and I'll continue to highlight what is going on over there as in my role as a member of Parliament.
Why, that's what I wonder about, going to the West Bank, it must be dangerous. But, as you said, it's I thought it's despicable what's happening in Gaza as a genocide. And, and, and I couldn't help being a bit critical, right? And you can correct me if I'm right or wrong, because because like you say, yesterday they recognized Palestine as a state, but I thought, but I felt listening to the government, the people in 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 Gaza right now, they don't give a shit. Yeah, whether or not we recognize them, they need food, they need water, and they need the bombs to stop. And I feel like Keir Starmer and the government is making these, almost like punitive gestures to effectively, to cover the fact that they're actually doing very little, and they're letting Israel continue doing what they were doing. What do you think about that?
I've been very vocal inside Parliament and in the media columns that I write in national and local newspapers, but also in TV appearances as well, as it is a genocide and it is an apartheid nation. And I think that the UK have absolutely got to appreciate our historical role in what has happened in over 100 years, certainly going back to the Balfour Declaration. So certainly our past, and we owe, I've described it in Parliament as a historical debt to the Palestinian people. And certainly what the government have got to do is, and again, I've been very vocal about this, is firstly stop all arms sales, stop all to Israel, stop all military training of IDF personnel, and basically impose economic, military, and trade sanctions and diplomatic sanctions. There's absolutely no way that, with her rhetoric and what she's said, that the Israeli ambassador should still remain in post in this country. So certainly, stop arms sales, impose economic, military, trade, and diplomatic sanctions, and stand and try and take a leading role in the international community to call what is happening as crimes against humanity, war crimes, a genocide, and try and bring the perpetrators to justice. And that includes as well highlighting exactly what's happening in regard of settler colonialism and the settler violence that's over there. We're seeing ethnic cleansing, the seizing of Palestinian land, and I think we've got to take a bold and vocal stance against some of the rhetoric that President Trump's been making about trying to create a Trump Riviera or a Trump Gaza
Oh,
or whatever that suggestion is, because that is ethnic cleansing, plain and simple.
yeah, whatever fantasy that is, and Donald Trump head needs to be called out so and but and and all these things that you mentioned would start to make a big difference. But why doesn't the government have not done more up until now? Because the war's been raging on for a couple of years. And why has it not done these things before now?
Something else as well that I've highlighted as well, David, as well, is I was a co-sponsor of the 10-minute rule bill that Jeremy Corbyn brought forward in regard of the establishment of an independent inquiry into Britain's role in what's happening in Gaza, or what's happened in Gaza, because there's absolutely no doubt about it. Our foreign policy has left an awful lot to be desired, and we've got questions that should be put towards the UK government and the public, the British public. They deserve and they need answers on this, especially when we look at other things such as the military training that I touched on earlier, the military training of IDF personnel in UK, but
Yeah,
also exactly what's happened from RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. What's exactly has been recorded there from surveillance missions that have left a UK airbase, but also as well as exactly what cargo has been transported to Israel from that airbase and others. So there's an awful lot of questions that the UK have got to answer.
yeah, and I really hope they get that independent inquiry. I suspect they won't, because I suspect I suspect there's no way that Kirchner is gonna agree to that. As we might,
Now, if
but
he doesn't with David, we're still going to, there's still myself and a good cohort, a good vocal group of MPs that will be pushing for that. That's it. Gaza is not going to disappear from the international agenda. Not certainly when
no.
there's millions of people that take to the streets to highlight exactly how abominable what's happening actually is, and also as well as there is a group of us in Parliament, and it is a growing figure. And it's cross-party as well. There are many Labour MPs and MPs of other parties that highlight exactly what is going on. We're not going anywhere. We're still going to try and do everything that we possibly can to fight the corner for the Palestinian people.
I think that's very great to hear, because I think people sound like myself, feel that voices are trying to be shut down, and that it's good to hear that there's a cohort of MPs gonna stick to that. And then, if you don't mind, I suppose, go back a wee bit, and talk about the Labour Party, because We've gone for, maybe 10 years ago or whatever, being vehemently anti-austerity and, really pointing the finger at the Conservatives, how you said, well, you terrible Tories, you've cut benefit, you've done this, and look at where and no, look at where the party is there. And I wonder if you have an idea of what's been the catalyst or what's been the start of the transgression to where we are today from core party values.
Well, my own journey in the party is this, that I was always a Labour Party voter. Ever since I was old enough to vote. I'm just turned 43, so I joined the party in 2016. Pardon me, I joined the party 2016 because the real fiercely anti-austerity message that really, really did hit home for me. Because by that point, I think we'd seen 6 years of Conservative and a little bit of Liberal Democrat austerity, as well as we could see the social devastation and the social consequences that it led to. So I joined the party in 2016, and I was out campaigning in the 2017 and the 2019 general elections. And 2017 was a phenomenal experience because we really did upset the odds and we came very, very close to actually forming a government. And the message really did hit home across the entire United Kingdom of that the country has been savaged by years of austerity. We'd seen gross inequality that was exaggerated and accelerating at ridiculous levels. And we needed to get back to core Labour Party values that I've touched on earlier. But something that the Labour Party, this is why I joined it, is the redistribution of power and wealth and opportunity across society for the benefit of the many. And we can see that right now because in 2025 we're seeing a Dickensian level of poverty, something that I talk about a lot in the House of Commons is the right to food, and I do a lot of work with the Joseph Rowntree Foundation and the Trussell Trust to try and say about the essentials guarantee for this. Quite frankly, David, for the sixth richest economy on planet Earth, the fact that we've got millions of people relying on 3-day emergency food parcels to feed themselves is an absolute scandal, and it shows the dreadful inequality that we've got in the UK. Now, what I would say is, why has that changed? I would say that it's probably fair to say that in 2020, Keir Starmer stood on I think it was 10 leadership pledges that he made. And in all honesty, those leadership pledges were pretty much a continuation of that fierce anti-austerity message that Jeremy Corbyn brought to the party. Now, Keir Starmer convinced the membership that that was his way that he would be in charge of the party. And I think it's fair to say that pretty much nearly every one of those pledges have been deleted from history, and he's not followed them. Now that we have got a Labour government in power, I've been critical as well and said that we almost try to appeal to reform voters. We're almost trying to appeal to conservative voters. What I think that the Labour government should be doing is appealing to the people that are Labour voters, the people that voted us in 2024 on a manifesto and a platform of change. Now, that change is to positively change society. Now, cuts to welfare is one example. That's certainly not going to positively change society. So, certainly within the party, and now currently I've got a temporary suspension. I'm still a Labour Party member, but I've had the parliamentary whip temporarily withdrawn pending investigation. What I would say to you, David, is that I'm not going to change my politics. I'm still fiercely anti-austerity. I'm still going to campaign for the essentials guarantee. I'm still going to campaign for building that caring and compassionate society that the most vulnerable people in the UK need. So my politics isn't going to change, but I'm going to try and get back into the Labour Party, and I'm going to try and move the Labour Party and shape the Labour Party as one member, just being one member like everybody else that's in the party. I'm going to try and shape and shift the party into the position that I think it should be in. And when we look at the problems that we've got in this country, it's because of austerity and inequality.
Yeah.
And going back to those kind of founding principles of the Labour Party, that's how we need to govern, and that's how we need to change society.
Do you think Keir Starmer has a direction? Because the way you said he was elected on these 10 pledges, which have always been eliminated. and I get the feeling, I don't know where you but I feel like he has no other, he's no direction at all, and I think the voters don't know what he stands for, and I'm not sure that he does either. And I think there's an element of him trying to recreate Blairism of the late 90s, um, 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 because he knows that he's lost and that he needs some direction.
What I would say about political leaders is that political leaders and leaders of parties, they
Sorry, I should give
no,
up
are
the
you
thanks.
as long as you're okay, that's the main thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I've got a glass of water next
Yeah.
to me.
I won't die. I won't die.
Cheers.
I'm afraid. Sorry.
No,
Good.
no, not at all. Yeah, I was just going to say, David, that when we look at political leaders, real political leaders, they make the weather, they shape the political agenda, and they try and change the country. Now, when we look at Labour Party history, who's going right back to Keir Hardie, or right after World War II, we saw Clement Attlee and the kind of establishment of the welfare state and the creation of the NHS. And then even when we look at later on, and you touched on Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Now, those four names of Hardie, Attlee, Brown and Blair, people might have different opinions about Brown and Blair, and that's absolutely fine. But what I will say is all four of those people, they shaped the political agenda and they tried to
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they had something defining, a defining mission of what they were trying to achieve. Now, what I would say is, as well as I would say that the government right now under Keir Starmer has been a little bit reactionary. I think we need to be more proactive. We need to actually say this, these are our policies and we're going to enact them. We need to be bold. And there's no doubt about it, after that 14 years of austerity, because we've seen austerity savage communities, we've then seen a global pandemic, and then we've seen a cost of living crisis which is still going on and making ordinary people poorer. We need a bold, transformative leadership and with a bold, transformative political agenda to take to the country and actually redistribute power and wealth and alleviate poverty across society.
Yeah, we do, but I feel like Keir Starmer, as you say, that over recent months, he's just come from one crisis to another. He got a bit of a rest last week while the cameras were on the orange man from America, but but uh,
What I would say, what I
his
would say is,
films are not going away.
we've spoken about quite a few of the things that haven't been good enough, and I've been open and honest about that for in my first 15 months as a Labour MP. But what I will say is there has been some things that have been very, very good. For example, in my constituency, the restoration of the mine workers' pension scheme, that's been brilliant. That has benefited about 430 constituents in mine. That is something only a Labour government would ever do. We've got the Employment Rights Bill, which has given probably in 50 years, so maybe even two generations, the biggest improvement to workers' rights that this country's seen. Now, that's real Labour Party values. What I'm wanting, David, is I want more of those things. I want us to do more of those types of Labour policies. That's really what people expect and demand from a Labour government.
Let's hope we get more of these posts. It's from the
Indeed.
Labour Party. But I was wondering, this transgression of the Labour Party over the last few years, yeah, you know, what's it doing to other parties? Because Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana are starting their party. Of course, it's a right to reform. Yeah, and no, do you think there are people leaving the party to join other parties if we're not careful?
Oh, I mean, we've got a real issue. I think you touched on reform there as well, though, David. I think when we look at that, we've got to take the responsibility for that as well, is because after the Conservatives doing so badly and creating so much inequality in society, we've had in Scotland, in a Scottish context, we've had nearly 2 decades of the SNP where it's been a disaster to education, to health, to public services, to local councils, to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, to Police Scotland. It's been an absolute litany, a catalogue of SNP disaster. People voted Labour for change. And we've got to make that positive change, because if we don't do that in our 5 year term in government, what comes next and the potential of a reform government is terrifying, because reform have showed themselves to be the enemy of the working class. We would go back to, I think it was described as Thatcherism on steroids. They are no friend of the working people. What I would say about reform as well is that they are trying to scapegoat minorities and pin societal issues, societal inequality that we've got, on a cohort of people to try and deflect and distract from their own political agenda. What comes next in regard to reform is absolutely terrifying.
Uh, as a, that, uh, that other user migrants as a scapegoat.
The Reform are trying to use migrants as a scapegoat for the inequality that we've got. I've said this in my Sunday Mail article, and I've said this on television as well, as if you cannot get a council house, if you cannot see a doctor, if you cannot see a dentist, if your road is covered in potholes, if your local authority is having to close community centres or leisure facilities or libraries, if you're waiting years upon years for an operation, these are political decisions. That is not the fault of migrants. That is down to failed political ideology like austerity that robs people of the essential services that they need. Every issue that we've got, the issues of inequality in society, have been man-made political decisions. That's where people should be frustrated and point their finger of blame at.
What would you say to the people that are out on the streets right now and saying, look, I'm not racist, I'm not far right, I'm just here because I'm done with, the influx of people coming into the community. Do you think they have a legitimate right to voice that, or do you think they're just misled or wrong?
I think that absolutely people have got opinions, and politicians should absolutely be listening to the people of the country. That is a given. That should be rule number one for a politician. But what I've said there, I would reiterate, the issues, societal problems that we've got in this country are down to failed politics and failed politicians that have had completely the wrong agenda. Over the last sort of 15 years, we have seen the biggest transfer of wealth away from ordinary people into the multimillionaire and billionaire class. We have seen gross inequality. The richest in society are racing away from everyone else, and then as a consequence of that, they make everyone poorer. Now, what I would say is people are in desperate circumstances. They're in abject poverty, and a lot of people are angry. Let's direct the anger at the right people, and that is the multi-billionaires and multimillionaires that have accelerated away and taken advantage of these austerity years. Now, one solution from that I campaign for, and I speak a lot in Parliament, is the redistribution of wealth. Now, I've been a big advocate and a campaigner for a 2% annual wealth tax on multimillionaires that have got £10 million worth of assets and more. Now, if we do that, that would raise in the region of £24 billion per annum. If we equalise capital gains tax so that we tax income and wealth at least at the same, then we can try and equalise society further, because that would raise in the region of £12 billion per annum. Now, for those two arguments there, £36 billion, what we can do is we can invest in our education system, we can invest in our NHS, we can invest in leisure centres for people, and actually give our youth the opportunity for positive social mobility. If we can redistribute that wealth, then we can do an awful lot of good. And we can also right historical wrongs, things such as the WASPy women, who I've been a big campaigner for, and that is something else that we've got wrong in our first year in government. Then we can actually positively transform society. We can only do that by equalising things and redistributing wealth.
Then come the budget or the autumn statement toward the end of November, do you think there's any possibility of Rachel Reeves doing any of these things? Or will she be saying welfare, 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 as they normally do?
sitting with myself and an awful lot, a healthy amount of Labour MPs within the Parliamentary Labour Party are really trying to exert as much pressure and influence on the Treasury as possible to say, look, we've got to build this caring and compassionate society. We've got to redistribute power and wealth across it. That's classic, as I say, classic Labour Party values. There's still an awful lot of us that are fighting for that from within.
Yeah.
So we're putting out representation towards the Treasury Department. We do that in urgent statements. We do that in questions. We do that in Westminster Hall debates or backbench business debates. We do that in the form of letters to the Chancellor and her Treasury colleagues. We're inside Parliament. We're there to work for our constituents and try and rebuild this country after 15 years of neglect and austerity. So the fight goes on. And what I will say is to use a trade union slogan, we don't call it the struggle for nothing, comrades, but we're up for the fight and we're still doing everything we possibly can.
Well, I feel like great to hear that, Brian, because always I'm sure for me, and I don't know if you outside the West, and so probably we need the reassurance that there's people like you and your colleagues who are still fighting for the grassroots working class people because we can't forget. So it is good news. So people hate me that there's people like you, man. So thank you.
There is
Um,
there's still an awful lot of us within the party, within the Labour Party, that are doing that, and we've got to be within the party to try and shape it from within. A lot of people say, "Oh well, why are you still in the Labour Party?" Because I still think that the Labour Party is the best and most likely vehicle to redistribute power and wealth and opportunity across society and make this country the place that everybody wants it to be and deserves it to be. So that's why I'm still in the Labour Party and will keep on fighting from within.
and are you going down to the conference next week?
I am. I'm speaking at a couple of fringe events about deindustrialisation, but also with momentum and the future of the Labour Party. So I'm looking forward to going down to conference and speaking with an awful lot of members from across the country. Because when I go away, for example, I'm speaking at an event tomorrow in Brighton, and then I've got conference at the start of over the weekend and the start of next week in Liverpool. I go around all over speaking at political meetings all over the UK. And when I speak to people, people are exhausted of the politics of the last decade and a half. They do want change, not just
Yeah.
Labour Party members. And what I will say is, as well, as I've got two fantastic constituency Labour parties in my constituency, and those members, they want an end to austerity. They want to reshape and rebuild this country. And that goes for Labour Party members all over the UK.
Oh, that's good. I would love to go to conference if I could get a media ticket. I would be there,
Well,
Unless it gets fun, but you never
Well,
know.
it's every. There's also as well the opportunity for you as well. The Scottish Conference will be in Glasgow in February, so that might be worth an
Oh,
application into Scottish Labour and see if you can get that
uh,
then.
yeah, I got a media ticket last year. I hate to confess it, but I got a media ticket to the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham last year. And that was fun just to see everything.
You've got to know your enemy. You got to know what they're up to.
Yeah, the after war, no, you're right. So, and Brian, it's been a pleasure to talk to you today. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Me too. No, thank you so much, David. I really appreciate the invite on, and hopefully we get an opportunity, not just at conference sometime, but if you're ever looking for a repeat guest, I'd be more than delighted to come back on.
That's great news. I've been delighted. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Cheers, David. Bye bye.
So,